We're back here on the Next Panel podcast for the first time in about a month since we broke down Obi-Wan Kenobi Season 1, wrapped up that series. Today we're talking Thor, Love and Thunder. Been out for a couple of weeks now. Been very anxious to share thoughts on the movie. A lot of polarizing thoughts in there, which is why I'm so excited to talk about it. Personally, I really enjoyed it, but we're going to break it down here on the Next Panel podcast. Joining me as always, we got Chris Mueller, Doc from the Twitter machine, BR_Doctor. Chris, what's going on, man?
Oh, not much. I always love having a new Marvel movie to talk about, and I might surprise people with some of these opinions.
Very nice. I look forward to it, and I know we'll have some time. After we're done here, we'll probably chat a little bit about Miss Marvel. That'll be out next week, but there's no shortage of Marvel content out right now, and I may ask you guys, not on this one, but maybe after the Marvel, probably this one, because I'll put this one up before the weekend, but this weekend is actually San Diego Comic-Con, too, so I think they're going to be... I saw some of the leaks. I don't know how accurate any of them are, if not all of them, I'm not sure. I don't know if they were debunked or whatever, but we'll find out on the weekend what's coming up with Marvel as part of Phase 4 and all this other stuff. But we are talking Thor, Love and Thunder today. Phil, you're on the Twitter machine as well. Phil, DL616. Phil, what's going on, dude?
I'm good. I am surprised how many people are down on Phase 4. Like, this has been a topic of discussion for, like, the last few days. Like, has Marvel fallen off during Phase 4? And I don't really get it.
Yeah, let's get into that first, because I saw you tweeting about that, Phil, and I very much agree with what you said. I mean, everyone has their own favorites within each phase and whatever. I mean, I personally, not with every single movie, we kind of ragged on Eternals here when we reviewed that many months ago, but overall, I've enjoyed Phase 4. To me, it's been a little bit of everything, especially with the shows that have largely delivered for the most part, and like I said, we'll talk Miss Marvel next week. But yeah, it's been interesting, especially coming off of the release of this movie, because there was definitely... I don't even know what's the minority or majority. I'm not sure what the exact rating is or the consensus on this film. If it's just the vocal minority, we'll talk about it. That didn't like it, wasn't a fan of it, which is completely fine. I'm not saying you're wrong for thinking that. We'll get into your guys' thoughts here as well. But it kind of sparked this conversation that Phase 4 has been lacking and that MCU fell off after Endgame, Infinity War, whatever. So kind of get into that a little bit, Phil, as far as what you were talking about on Twitter and defending Phase 4 for all the films and shows that have been released in the last year or two.
I don't know. I've seen, because it was a question I was asked during Grapsity about, do I feel like they've fallen off? And I keep seeing it on Twitter too. It's just kind of weird, because I've seen people go, oh, well, they've made 2 disappointing movies in a row, so that equates to them falling off. And I'm just like, no, maybe you just didn't enjoy those 2 movies. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Like, they've made movies that people didn't like before.
Were there people trying to say that Doctor Strange was a bad movie?
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
I've seen a lot of people that don't like Doctor Strange.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen people calling it mid, which mid has become the most overused slang. I feel like it's dead at this point. Like, just stop using the word mid. It's done. It's dead.
Yeah,
MJF kind of killed it.
Yeah. Once you start seeing corporations and public Twitter accounts using a slang, it's dead. Like, once you start seeing a lot of these commercials start using bling bling, that's when you knew it was dead. Same thing here. It's dead.
No, but I agree, though.
I mean, in fairness, bling bling got played out real quick, though.
So did mid.
Yeah.
And yet it is interesting, though. I mean, I'm curious as far as that one's, particular person, and just in general, calling the last 2 movies disappointing. I mean, are we talking critically? Are we talking from a personal thoughts on this standpoint? Are we talking box office wise? Because I know Doctor Strange wasn't amazing box office wise. All these movies have made a tremendous amount of money. I don't know. It might be honestly at a point where, and we'll get into it with this movie specifically, if the expectations are like sky high, because I thought Ragnarok was a superior film to this one, but I still thought it was a great movie for very different reasons. And same thing with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, where I think people, especially coming off of Spider-Man in December, which definitely ranks up there as one of the top 5, top 3, if not for a lot of people, number 1 best MCU movie yet. I don't know if it's just because they can't compare to those, or I feel like with a lot of people this day and age, not just with movies and wrestling and whatever, but just in general, it's either the best or it's the worst, and there is no middle ground. I don't want to say mid like you said, Phil, but like somewhere in there, people can't decipher that, and it's just weird to me. But Chris, I'm curious what your thoughts are coming off that conversation with people trashing on Phase 4 and this being the catalyst for that for some reason.
I think Marvel started off so laser focused on, like, we need to do these couple of characters and then get the Avengers together. And now that the universe is so big, they're trying so many different things. I knew this was going to happen eventually. Once they started dabbling into different genres and exploring different characters in different ways, you were going to end up splitting the fan base a little bit, because even though all their movies were different, there is a very cohesive feel to the early MCU. Like, it all feels like one sort of thing. And now you have a series like Moon Knight that feels so radically different than what we just saw in Ms. Marvel. And that's a good thing for me, though, because, like, to me, that is them expanding outside of just let's make the same comic book stuff over and over, and they're trying new things. It still all feels like Marvel to me, but I understand why some people might be unhappy with Phase 4, because some of the things in it just might not be for them. I've been happy with the vast majority of Phase 4 stuff, though. I think they've gotten a really good group of actors for some of these characters, and yeah, it's working for me for the most part.
Yeah, same here. And like you said, it definitely is. I mean, for some might be an issue, but they're doing so much stuff, and I don't know if it's a case where they're doing it to see what works, because some of these shows, movies may not get sequels, there might not be follow-up on them for a long time, because there is so much stuff to focus on right now. Maybe it is, like you said, on them being laser focused on the Avengers early on. We currently don't know what the overall, I don't want to say end game, because obviously that's played out, but like the end goal is with this whole thing going forward. Are we building to Secret Wars, or is it something else? I mean, there's a lot of different ways they can go with it, and even with the Secret Wars thing, I know the Russo brothers had commented on it in an interview like a week or two ago, talking about if they were to do it, which doesn't sound like they will, because they haven't been involved with the MCU since Endgame, and they might, who knows, but for them it would be like this massive undertaking, and they would make it a 2-movie thing, if not multiple movies, which would be interesting, and I think from the little that I know about it, I think that'd be cool. But there's so many different ways they can go with it, and maybe because there's not one definitive end game with where we're going with a lot of these characters, that might be why people aren't not enjoying it, but not as high on it as they were a couple of years ago. Who knows? But we'll get to Thor Love and Thunder specifically here. It was just interesting, this conversation kind of started coming off of that movie, which I saw it on the Thursday before it was officially released, and I came back and I was looking at, because I try to avoid all the spoilers that I can, and even when the movie right before it's out, there's still spoilers out there. I think there was a spoiler regarding one of, if not both of the end credit scenes for this movie. I don't remember, but I avoided it. And I saw a lot of people talking about how I saw people straight up say on Twitter this movie was trash. And again, everyone is their own, everyone has their own opinion. And you don't like the movie, that's fine. But I was very much surprised that people called this like terrible, and that it was worse than Thor: The Dark World, which was interesting.
Oh
and
my God.
yeah, like I know you were saying, Phil, on Twitter a while ago that because there was this article that came out, I think from comicbook.com, that said people all of a sudden like The Dark World, and it's in comparison to other movies, but which first of all isn't true. I know there's a lot of people that like that movie and for right reasons and whatever, but it's interesting, and just a lot of people automatically trashing this one as the worst one yet, and it wasn't as good as Ragnarok. I know I kind of threw a lot at you guys there, but Chris, I'll start with you. Talk a little bit about this movie and just your overall thoughts on it and the reaction to it being like amazing or terrible or somewhere in between.
I mean, I will say that I enjoyed the majority of it, but I don't think this was as strong of an outing as Ragnarok for Thor. And I think part of the reason for that maybe is, like, each of those first 3 Thor movies had different directors and all felt completely different. And now we're getting the first 2 back-to-back with Taika as the same guy. And it almost felt to me at times that they were like, well, everybody loved the comedy of Ragnarok, so we got to put a bunch of comedy in this so they like it again. And even though I thought a lot of it did work, some of it felt just slightly either too much or forced to me. So there were a couple of points in the movie where I started to be like, okay, move along, guys. That's not as funny as you think it is. But the stuff that I really liked, I wish there was more of. Like, I thought all the Natalie Portman, Jane Foster stuff was fantastic. I thought Christian Bale was outstanding as the villain. The Guardians weren't in it nearly as much as I expected them to be based off of what I had like read and heard beforehand. So I just was going into it, like, hopeful that it would follow up Ragnarok, and I do like a lot of what they did. I just felt like, for me, this was, I won't say mid, but, like, a little better than that. But not, like, to me, this probably was enjoyable on the same level as the first Thor movie. Like, I actually really like the first Thor movie.
Yeah.
But I would place this one and that one at the same level, and then Ragnarok above them and The Dark World below them.
That makes sense. It's funny that you say that because I completely forgot about that when we did that retrospective review 2 years ago, and it's wild to think it's been 2 years. I remember you said you were a big fan of that first Thor movie when we were breaking it down. But yeah, no, I very much agree with you. I still think Ragnarok is the superior movie, but I thought there was a lot to like about this movie as well. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It definitely went by quickly. I mean, this was probably one of the shortest MCU movies we've seen in a long time. I mean, obviously...
It was under 2 hours, right?
Yeah, it was like around 2 hours, and what was the... Doctor Strange was 2.5 hours at least. No Way Home was 3, I think, or like close to 3. Eternals was a very long movie. Shang-Chi was probably around... I mean, you can just quickly look this up, obviously. I'm just going off the top of my head. That was probably close to 2 hours, if not a little longer. So it was the first movie in a while.
2 hours and 12 minutes.
Okay, so probably... For this movie or Shang-Chi?
Shang-Chi, 2 hours and 12 minutes.
Yeah, so probably right around the same time length. And no, it makes sense. And I think they could have done more with certain things. But going off of what you said, Chris, do you think that the contrast, like you said, with the comedy and there being a little too much of it at different points, some of it not working, do you think that because it was like very humorous at certain points with a lot of the stuff they did, and then the next scene would be about Natalie Portman's cancer treatment, and a lot of the stuff that we see in the MCU, it's a nice distraction from reality, and we've never really had these elements of reality in the movies before. Not to say we've had none of it, but with something like this, talking about cancer, which is very real for a lot of people, I just thought it was an interesting contrast. Do you think we went from one end of the spectrum to the other way too quickly in certain portions of this movie?
That might have been it, but I actually thought that they did a decent job with the cancer stuff, because you know that a comic book movie, especially one that's not focusing solely on Jane, was never going to address that in the most satisfying way. Like, cancer is something that it's so impactful to the people going through it that, like, you really can't capture that very well in a movie. But I think what they did was good. Like, they showed the reality of it. Like, they showed her getting chemo. They showed her feeling sick. They showed her, like, right after, I actually really liked that montage right after she found out the diagnosis, and you see her going through all these different stages of, like, like in one moment she's pacing, and in the next moment she's balled up on the couch crying with a blanket over her, and it's like, it felt to me like they really did go out of their way to give Natalie Portman way more to do here than she had to do in Dark World, especially.
Oh, for sure. I'm surprised, and maybe you can shine some light on this. Why was she not involved with Ragnarok at all? Was that just a timing thing, or like, I mean,
she had to, or she had, like, exited the MCU. I want to say, let me think.
Well, the last movie was Dark World. I know she was. Was it a contract thing?
Like, I think she had more movies on her contract, but she asked to be let out, and they agreed to that.
Okay.
And I don't know if it was any kind of personal reasons or, like, drama or whatever, but I know that she had said at one point, like, really early on, like, yeah, it's not impossible that I'll come back. It's just right now I want to focus on other things.
That makes sense, yeah.
I think it probably came down to, like, Taika or somebody, Kevin Feige, whoever, approached her and was like, hey, there's this really, like, meaningful story from the comics that we would like to tackle, and it deals with, you know, Jane becoming Thor but also having cancer and all this stuff, and she probably really jumped at the chance to kind of be much more of a complex character than what she was originally given to do. So I'm glad she came back, because I'm a big Natalie Portman fan. I always have been. And I think that this was definitely her strongest of her 3 movies in the Marvel Universe.
I completely agree. I'm glad they went back to the roots of Thor, and because a lot of these characters that weren't in this movie in regular roles, but, you know, we saw bits and pieces of, like Lady Sif making a return very briefly at a certain point, Selvig making a quick cameo, Darcy appearing at one point. Like, none of these people were in Ragnarok at all. So it was nice to kind of go back to that. And also having, some of the characters from Ragnarok, like Korg and, people like that, Lady Valkyrie and whatever, having them brought back and play their roles as well as they did, I thought was great. I liked the interaction between Valkyrie and Jane throughout the entire movie as well. I thought they had great chemistry because Valkyrie was kind of like the middle person there. I thought that was great. So, Phil, I want to get to you. Your thoughts on the film and just the reaction to it and people shitting on it, praising on it, whatever. Where's your mind at on this movie?
Yeah, I saw the full gamut of takes on this movie and MCU. I even saw somebody saying that Spider-Man wasn't actually a good movie. It was just good because people liked the nostalgia, and it was actually an awful movie.
Wow.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of takes over the weekend. But the prevalent take I keep seeing with this movie is that the humor was just kind of overpowering. And I think in some scenes it was, but I think as a whole, I think there were parts that they did kind of back off the humor. And when they did give the serious moments the weight they deserved. I do think this was Jane's best showing in any of the movies. I think if I remember correctly, didn't she pull out because Patty Jenkins got let go? Because Patty Jenkins was supposed to be either director or writer for Dark World.
Mm-hmm.
And
there was something with that.
And she backed out, and because she backed out, what do you call it? Actress that played Jane. Why am I drawing a blank?
Natalie Portman, yeah.
Natalie Portman wasn't on board with that, so she didn't want to do any more movies after she was let go. But as the story goes, once she heard that she was going to get kind of a leading role in this movie, then she was back on board.
There you go.
And it was probably also a pretty nice paycheck, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I don't think she's doing it just for the paycheck, but you know that these Marvel actors are making money hand over fist now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd have to assume that also the idea of doing something more challenging and, being, a female lead and not just being, a damsel in distress or a love interest was probably more interesting to her as well. But yeah, I thought this was her best showing. I thought they went out of their way to not just make her a competent Thor, but to let people know, no, she is like a competent scientist as well. And there were several scenes where I felt like she was, at her best as an actress. I feel like for as much criticism as people are going to throw at this thing for the humor, I feel like people have to give this thing credit for developing Thor as a character over 4 movies. I feel like he's had way more character development between Ragnarok and now than people are actually giving it credit for.
Yeah, I mean, his character development more than, I don't want to say is the best, because I think Captain Rogers was great, Steve Rogers was great, Iron Man as well. Specifically the core characters, but yeah, over the course of his 4 movies and just the different tone that each movie has, and they kind of went through it here. I like the fact they recapped his entire journey up to this point, including all the loss that he suffered with dad, mom, brother, the love interest, everyone over the last number of years, which I thought was great. So he was great in this movie. I really liked the role that Jane played as well, to kind of cap off that story, because they didn't really have an appropriate conclusion to it in Ragnarok. It was kind of a throwaway line that they broke up, and that was it. And I'm glad they brought her back to kind of wrap up her story here from the comics. So, the end game was never really in doubt with where they were going with it. But I thought the way they did it, because it wasn't like, to Chris's point earlier about like the cancer stuff, and I thought the way they portrayed it was very well done. It wasn't as if like he magically cured her and she was fine. They lived happily ever after. No, I thought the way they did it with him kind of adopting Christian Bale, the Gore's daughter, and that was like the genesis behind the
literally love in the movie.
Yeah, I was gonna say literally love and thunder. I thought that was fantastic, and I would have never thought that coming into this movie, but I thought the way they wrapped it up was perfect. I thought that was very well done. But yeah, kind of mentioning gore. You guys mentioned that a little bit, but let's talk about Christian Bale here. To me, I thought that was the best part of the movie was Bale as Gore, and I thought we got enough of him. I saw some people saying that there wasn't enough. I don't know. For me, anyway, I thought we got enough of him in the 2 hours this movie went for, and I thought he was fantastic. Opening the movie with him, kind of establishing his motivations out of the gate, and his acting was great, and looking like a more badass Voldemort from the old Harry Potter movies. He just looked fantastic. So, curious what your thoughts were on what your guys' thoughts were on Christian Bale's Gore.
He was great. I would have liked to see more with him, though, personally. But I think he did. Like, it looked like Christian Bale was just having a ball doing this.
He really did.
Yeah.
I mean, he looked like he was having a blast, yeah.
Yeah, I thought he was good. It's hard because I just think Gore, the God Butcher stuff and the God Bomb stuff that this is based off of is just so much better. And that was one of the things I immediately thought when I saw the trailer for this, is I was like, I really want a straightforward adaptation of those books, but it was clear they weren't going to do that. And so I had already lowered my expectations. I think Christian Bale did a great job in terms of what he was given, but just in terms of how the character looks in the comics, he looks different. His powers are different. And we get to see him kill a lot more gods in the comics. And I think that was kind of missed in the movie. And that might be why people were like, we need to see more of him, because we didn't really see why he was a threat. He just called himself the God Butcher, and you knew it was his plan. But in the comics, he killed a lot of gods.
What was his original origin in the comics for being the God Butcher? Because you said they changed it from the comics.
It's basically the same. We don't really. They really focused on his daughter, but in the comics, he lost his entire family.
Oh wow. Okay.
And so it's a bit different. The origins aren't that different, but his powers are different. His powers are more like the symbiote.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, they gave him like the black goo monsters, but like the way he used the sword is different in the comics. The way he looks is kind of different as well. Like he has like the sword kind of acts like a cloak and everything for him as well. It just looks cooler in the comics. That could be a special effects thing. That could be they don't want to do anything that looks too similar to this symbiote if they use the symbiote later. But yeah, again, I wasn't expecting any of that going in. I had already lowered my expectations.
Yeah, well, like you said. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Phil.
But no, I thought he was great in the role, and I thought he was a good villain. I thought that if anything, one of my, I won't say a gripe, but one of my criticisms of the movie is that I feel like it tries to be 2 or 3 different movies wrapped up in one. And I feel like the God Butcher stuff could be its own movie, and I feel like the Jane stuff could be its own movie.
I agree completely. That's exactly how I feel about it.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, I mean, especially with Gore, too. I think, like you said, Phil, I think it definitely would have benefited from showing more of that. Because, like you said, it was more of a... I mean, I understand the whole... I don't know. I mean, I guess you didn't have to show all of it, but it would have been nice if we got to see more of it than we did. We saw the aftermath of a certain attacks, and we saw the various dead corpses of these gods and whatever, which was cool. It was a nice visual. I know some of it was straight from the comics, but still, I think that, they could have done a better job of actually showing him kill the gods beyond what we saw in the opening, first scene, which was great. But I wish we got more of that. I don't know if it was a timing thing, because the movie was only around 2 hours, and I think they could have maybe thrown in 10 minutes more of some of these attacks, if not even 5 or 10. I think that would have made a big difference. Did you guys see the rumor before the movie was released? And I didn't get my hopes up for an appearance from the movie because I knew it was already cut, but I think they had shot scenes with Peter Dinklage's character from Infinity War, as well as Jeff Goldblum as the Grand Master, who was obviously the main guy in Ragnarok, and he's a god, I guess. And they could have done something with him. I don't know if that's canon, if they release it as like a deleted scene. If he dies, did that actually happen or whatever? But did you guys hear about that, and how they were, I guess, filming scenes for the movie that were ultimately cut from the final form?
Yeah, Taika actually talked about this recently, and he even said, like, I hate director's cuts, so I hope nobody's expecting a longer cut.
I heard that, yeah.
But yeah, he talked about both those guys.
Didn't they pay the actress from Game of Thrones like $7 million or some crazy amount to be in this movie, and then she got cut?
Is that true?
Amelia Clark?
No, Lena Headey. Is that it?
Oh, wow. That would be a big payday for her if she didn't have to actually, like, do much. That's funny.
Yeah. The reason I saw it is because I saw that she got paid this big payday, and she's getting sued by, I guess, like her agent or something, because they didn't get their cut of this payday she got out of this Marvel movie and other movies. But I thought it was funny because when I saw that, and I was like, wait, she's not even in the movie, and that's when I started looking it up. I was like, oh, she got cut.
I wonder who she was going to play.
You know. But man, it was really good to see Sif again, like you guys said. I was very happy that they went with a more comic accurate armor.
And she was legitimately funny in that one part where she's like, now I get to go to Valhalla. And he's like, well, no, that only happens if you die in battle. The battle's over. You survive. She's like, oh, shit.
Yeah, and then she survived anyway, which was nice.
No, there were some jokes that worked. Like the joke that I definitely laughed the longest at was when Thor came and talked to the kids in the cage, and he was trying to be encouraging, and Axel was just like, "Go away."
Yeah, that kid was really good in this movie. Actually, whoever, I don't know the kid's name, but yeah, Heimdall's child was funny.
Great.
There was a couple jokes that worked, and frankly, even though, like, when the first couple minutes that Russell Crowe is playing Zeus, I was like, what are they doing? And then the more I was watching him, the more I was like, okay, this is genuinely kind of funny, because Russell Crowe is not the kind of guy you'd expect to play the character this way.
Mm-hmm.
With the Greek accent.
Oh, and just, like, lifting his little skirt thing to go down the stairs the way he did was just such a funny little
Oh, that
detail.
was so funny, yeah.
And then the way he was throwing the lightning bolt around to look all impressive, like, the lightning bolt was impressive, but what he was doing wasn't, and that was such a funny little thing to throw in there, because that is the case with so many of these people who, like, try to brag and show off. It's like they are not as good as they think they are. And, yeah, they did a great job with that. That was good.
Him doing all that stuff with the Thunderbolt and showing off, and then just saying no afterwards was hilarious.
Yeah. That was.
I'm glad he survived. It would be interesting to see, like, a Thor versus Zeus battle, I think.
Yeah.
I thought his speech in the cutscene was the best acting he did in the entire movie.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, that was cool. It was funny how they kind of kept the joke from Ragnarok, where they had mentioned that Grandmaster had used when they were getting away in the plane or whatever it was at the end of the movie, and they were escaping Grandmaster, and they made the joke that they used that ship for like an orgy or whatever, and they brought that back for this movie because that was his overarching goal was for Zeus was to have just a massive orgy with all the gods, I guess, which was just great. And there were a lot of things in that scene, and I'm an idiot. I loved when they brought back the play thing from Ragnarok too, with the same exact actors too, with Chris Hemsworth, his brother Liam, and Matt Damon playing Loki. I thought that was fantastic. I love the fact they did that again.
Melissa McCarthy.
Yeah, that popped me huge. I'm like, who are they going to get to play Hela? And then it was Melissa McCarthy. I'm like, that's perfect. I thought that was awesome.
I knew about that a few months ago. Like,
oh, really?
That made it out into the news, and I had completely forgotten about it. So once she comes out in all that gear, it was so good. But later on, when they like after the big battle with Gore, and Matt Damon's like, should we produce a play about this? And they're like, whatever, dude, do whatever you want. And he's like, starts walking away like, exterior, we open on Asgard. And it's like, Jesus.
Dude, that was great. That was one of my favorite parts of the whole movie. And when I found out after the fact, I guess Valkyrie, Tessa Thompson, is that her name, Tessa Thompson?
Yes.
Yeah, I guess she had said in an interview after the fact that she actually fought to keep that scene in the movie. They were going to cut it, but she talked to... And she's not even in the scene. I mean, she's in the scene, but it has nothing to do with her. And I guess she thought it was like the funniest thing, and she was like, no, we have to keep this in the movie. And ultimately they did. And I'm so glad they did that there, because they didn't have to have that. And it really serves no purpose. It's just funny. So, yeah, the comedy for me in this movie, it definitely worked. Did they do it a lot of it? Were certain parts not funny? Did they drag on certain jokes for too long? For sure. Like when she was like touching his nose or something, like tickling his nose, like that was a little dumb. But some other stuff I thought was really funny though.
Valkyrie doing an Old Spice commercial was legitimately funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had a lot of stuff like that. Yeah, the fact they turned Asgard and this whole commercial like land, like Disney World or some shit, where they do tours and stuff like that. That was really funny. Even some of the stuff, again, I'm an idiot. I really liked that they had the comedy with Mjolnir and what's the other hammer? I forget.
Stormbreaker.
With Stormbreaker, like the little thing where he was acting jealous and whatever. It was really stupid, but I just found it really funny. So that stuff worked for me, which is why I enjoyed this movie overall. And there's a lot of different ways they can go with it going forward. And the fact that Gore's daughter, which I literally did not know ahead of time, that was his actual daughter. And that, I mean, I guess they'll be working together a little bit more and whatever going forward. I thought that was really cool.
Wait, that's Christian Bale's real daughter?
It's Chris Hemsworth's daughter.
Yeah.
Oh wow! I didn't know that.
I did not know that either.
Yeah. A lot of the kid characters from Asgard that were in the third act that were in the cage are kids from the actual actors in the movie, or like the.
Is that? Do you know if that's Idris's actual kid?
I don't think so.
I don't think it is, but I think that a lot of the kids in the movie were like their parents were also in the movie, or their parents worked on the movie.
Yeah, I heard that too.
I will say that when he empowered all the kids in that battle, like that was
loved it.
Fun. That was fun.
I think for as much flack as you can throw at this movie, I feel like the beginning of it is kind of shaky, but I think the third act of the movie is actually really good. I think the third act is possibly some of the best stuff in Phase 4.
Yeah, the art style that they use for when they go to that planet and it just all turns black and white, like that gave me a little bit of flashbacks to the first Sin City movie. Like it looked very nice. And one thing that I find interesting about this movie that a lot of people I don't see talking about, the villain wins in this movie. He gets to eternity first. He gets to make a choice. Chris Hemsworth, Thor, convinces him not to make the wrong choice. That's essentially the end of the movie. Like, he does accomplish his goal, though. Like, he gets the gate open and makes it to eternity first. It's one of the few instances in this universe where, like, the villain just straight up actually accomplishes his goal, just like Thanos did.
Well, my thought on it is because in the actual comics, there's this overarching story where you get to see young Thor, you get to see present day Thor, and then you see King Thor. And so throughout this movie, they did this really cool thing where earlier in the movie, he had like the same kind of look as young Thor with the fur. When he first came back to Earth, and then when he tries to impress Jane, he does like this gold armor that's like close to the Simons and stuff. And I picked up at some point in the movie, I was like, oh, they're having him literally progress through all three versions of Thor. And by the end of the movie, he makes a choice that he would have never made in the first movie because he wanted to just fight to win everything. And he just was like, nope. You got what you wanted. I want to be with Jane. I don't want to fight anymore. And I thought that's why I'm like, yo, the character development for him is just very underrated. Like, because I was about to say in the first Thor movie, but even 3 movies back, he would have tried to kill Gore. And it shows not just that he grew from everything he went through. It shows he grew from the stuff with Thanos, and it shows that he pretty much learned all of the lessons that Odin tried to teach him. And I feel like that's kind of the story of this movie, is that he is in so many ways king now. He led the kids in the army. He was a leader. And now he's in kind of Odin's same spot of adopting a kid like Odin adopted Loki, and he's trying to do better.
Yeah, absolutely. And the little scene at the end where, like, him and the little kid are just kind of arguing about her putting on the right boots.
Yeah.
And then you find out, like, they need the right boots because they're about to go into this big battle. Like, that was kind of adorable. But, yeah, there's a lot about this movie that works. It's just, I'll be honest, the one thing I think my biggest gripe, I think there was too much Korg.
You think so?
For me. I get that people like the character, but it felt to me like they almost responded to the positive cameo in Endgame, and then like the stuff in Ragnarok was saying like, okay, people love Korg, so let's give them more Korg.
That's true.
And I think Korg is one of those characters that's best in small doses.
Yeah, I feel like in some ways he's the Darcy of this movie, in a sense that people felt like there was too much Darcy in Dark World, and there was a little bit too much Korg in this movie. But I do like the meta thing they did there with, it's like Taika Waititi literally telling you the story because it's literally his story. He's the director. They did a few meta things like that. Like Asgard is kind of like a mirror for what Disney World is now.
Yeah, even Avengers Campus, honestly.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting. They did a lot of interesting things in there that might have went under people's noses because they were like, oh, it's too many jokes.
Yeah, no, you're right, though.
And seeing how far Asgard has come in that short amount of time is like a really funny indication of just how much more capable they are than just regular humans. Because, like, they went from being essentially a Norwegian fishing village in Endgame, when you find Thor, like, all chubby and sad, to being a place that's almost on par with Wakanda probably already. Like,
yeah,
it was a cool, like, little way to show, like, oh yeah, Asgardians are awesome, and they're gonna make, like, anywhere that they go like Asgard.
Yeah, I don't think people also picked up on the fact that what was it, like the Omni City or wherever the gods were?
Omnipotent City, yeah.
Omnipotent City. It's kind of like a mirror for what Asgard was in the first movie. They had all that wealth and they were living high off the hog, and they didn't care what was happening to people under them.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like everything that happened to the Asgardians humbled them. And so now they understand, caring for others, and Thor understood like having to look back and take care of his followers first. And I feel like he was he would have had the same kind of argument with Odin 4 movies back that he had with Zeus in this movie.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, no, it's definitely a mirror image of what we see. That's why, like you said, it kind of goes back to the whole arc of not just Thor himself, but really just Asgard in general. I mean, really, if you really think about it, aside from Thor himself, but the Asgard people, no one has had it worse than these people. I mean, in the first 2 movies, they're fine and whatever, but their fucking planet gets destroyed, and then they fly off in a ship thinking, okay, we'll start anew on Earth or wherever, in which process they get invaded by Loki and his men, so half of their people die there too, so they lose another 50% of their people. And then they move here. They lose another 50% of their people due to the snap, and obviously they come back, but they were gone for 5 years. So then they come back, and then more people get wiped out, I'm sure due to the alien invasion and other stuff, and they get their kids kidnapped, and they all survive, thankfully. So they've just had a really rough go at it in the last couple of years. I mean, I feel so bad, but it was great. I actually really like the kid thing, too. I'm glad you guys brought that up, because that was one of the criticisms I saw of the movie, like the fact they were all superpowered, they were overpowered, and they were like John Cena in 2009, just beating everyone with ease, which I'm like, I mean, it's not like they beat Gore or whatever, like they were just facing the underling aliens or whatever you want to call the creatures, so that didn't exactly bother me. But going back to the kid for a second, I feel like we talk about this a lot. Phil, I know you're a big proponent of bringing this in at some point, the Young Avengers, and I feel like this might be another step closer to getting that now that we have love in this movie, and now that we have love in the Thor franchise.
Yeah, because Love is not really a character for our comics. It seems like this is like a new character they made just for the movies.
Mm-hmm.
Thor has had actual daughters in the comics, but this doesn't seem like it's any of those characters. So, but I feel like they definitely set her up, just in case if they want to use her for Young Avengers. But I mean, again, I feel like just if you would have gone all the way back to that first Thor movie and imagined Thor as a dad, like I wouldn't have believed that
for
at all.
Sure.
Like, I mean, in some ways, I could see Tony as a dad before I could see Thor as a dad. I feel like him coming into Hawkeye's house in Age of Ultron and being very uncomfortable and like stepping on the Legos.
Yeah.
I feel like that kind of showed us the subtext. And again, for people that are like, oh, they don't connect any of these things. They absolutely did. They took that small seed from Age of Ultron, and that made that the reason why him and Jane broke up, and people didn't even catch it. But yeah, I feel like that kind of stuff of him being afraid to start a family and not knowing what that looked like, and then ending up with a family at the end of the movie, I thought that was a good story arc.
I like that a lot as well, and I'm glad you brought that up too. I feel like they did a great job. Like I said, I love Ragnarok. That's easily my favorite Thor movie, but they filled in the blanks here for why they broke up. We just found out that they broke up, like in a throwaway line, like I said earlier, in Ragnarok. We didn't actually see, really beyond what we saw in Dark World, like the actual relationship aspect of their relationship. We didn't really see them together doing stuff. I thought of the dumb stuff they showed them doing, like them going to a costume party, a Halloween costume party, and then like sitting on the couch watching a scary movie or whatever, and Thor was scared too. I love that stuff. I love seeing that sort of stuff, especially with a character like Thor. It shows that he has a human side to him as well. And I love that. And like you said, they kind of referenced the Age of Ultron stuff where he was worried that he might lose her, and that's how they drifted apart. And I thought it was really well done, and those certain things don't get enough credit.
Have you guys watched any of those Thor shorts when he was living with that guy? He had the roommate.
Yes.
I forget his roommate's name.
Yes, but there was one with the Grand Master too.
Yeah, they officially made that canon in this movie. Like, they referenced stuff from those shorts several times in this movie.
Oh, really? I haven't seen them yet. I know they're on Disney+.
What specifically did they reference? It was Daryl. Daryl's his name.
Daryl, if you notice, he was the tour guide.
Oh my God!
He was the tour guide when they showed Mjolnir.
That's hilarious. Okay, that's awesome.
That's really funny.
They referenced something else from it in the montages when they were in a relationship. Oh, another thing was in the shorts he called Nick Fury Nick Fury. That's how he had him in his phone.
Yeah, that's right. Nick Fury. That was funny.
Yeah, no, those are on Disney Plus, I think, now, right?
Probably.
I think they are.
Yeah.
If not, they're on YouTube for sure, because that's where I remember watching them.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if that was a conscious effort, but it looked like the same actor that played Daryl.
Yeah, I heard there was some reference, like you said, to that. I haven't seen the series, but I saw people talking about it after the fact, so that would make sense. But I had to go back and watch those. Aren't they only like a couple minutes long each?
Yeah,
they're not long at all. They're like special features on a DVD kind of thing.
Oh, okay, gotcha. That's funny.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys noticed, but the god that Korg prayed to was sitting on the throne of scissors, which I thought was hilarious because
yeah,
it's
the joke from Ragnarok.
Yeah,
that's so funny. That, and then not the same thing, but then at the end, I mean, unless this was a complete coincidence, but when he had that new partner or friend or whatever, and he calls him Dwayne, obviously, I'm thinking The Rock. That's the wrestling fan in me thinking that. I think they did that on purpose. I thought that was really funny too.
Taika said that it was intentional when somebody tweeted it to him.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah, I wasn't sure.
Yeah, and I just found an article that says, like, what happened to Daryl after the snap, and it's like, now he's a tour guide in New Asgard.
That's funny.
Yeah, the stuff that they tied back to from the other Thor movies I thought was actually very good. I mean, like I said, I know that some people hate Dark World, but I feel like they did a good job of filling in the gaps with Dark World. I really enjoyed that montage, like Graham said. There were a lot of things that they did with him and Jane that I thought worked, and I feel like that was some of the best stuff in the movie. I feel like their chemistry was good. I feel like this is the most believable they've been as a couple for, I feel like, the entire franchise.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, they did a great job of that. They made you care about her before they inevitably killed her off. So I thought they did a great job of that. Because if we had found out that she had died in between the last time that we saw her and we just never saw her again, I mean, people would care, obviously, but it just wouldn't mean as much as it did here with the journey from the beginning of the film to the end. So, no, they did a great job with it, and I love that last scene where, like, she's in his arms and the daughter is, kneeling over Gore's dying body or whatever. I thought that whole thing was great, and they have each other now, and I'm curious to see where they go with it from here. I mean, this is the fourth installment of any franchise in the MCU, aside from the Avengers itself. There were 4 Avengers movies, obviously, but beyond that, for any specific individual character, Thor's the first one. Not even Iron Man or Captain America got 4 movies. I mean, I guess Captain America technically is with Sam now taking over the role, but that's different. So we'll see where they go with it from here. I assume they will do a Thor 5. I assume Taika will be in charge of that as well, and we'll see if he can improve upon the criticisms that this movie got and kind of go on with what worked. And whatever, you know,
Hemsworth has been saying in interviews that he's not sure what his MCU future is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's talked about how he's more than willing to play the character more, but he's like, yeah, it's possible this is the last time we see Thor. That's not up to me.
It's possible. I mean, they ended in a way where it's definitely, you know, possible.
Yeah,
I would love to get a Thor 5. If we're getting Thor versus Hercules and Thor 5, I'd be all for that. And if we're getting Hercules, I have to assume we're getting Ares as well. I'd be here for that.
I was gonna say that was cool. Have you guys seen Ted Lasso? Because that's where that actor's from. I wasn't familiar with him.
Yeah, I don't watch Ted Lasso.
No, I don't. I'm not going to give Apple any money.
What?
It's on Apple TV.
Wait.
It's on Apple TV.
Why just Apple in particular? I'm not giving Apple any of my money. Like, what did they do?
Oh, I hate Apple. Like, as a company, I cannot stand. So I spent 12 years in the mobile phone industry, as you guys know, and like, Apple was the one company that's like, no, screw you guys. We're not going to go to this universal charging port that every other manufacturer agreed to use. Like,
yeah, right.
We're going to make it difficult on you, and we're going to nickel and dime you on every little thing we ever sell you, and we're going to overcharge you for stuff that, yes, it's high quality, but it's not nearly worth as much as what we're going to charge you.
That's true.
And it's like, there are some people who are almost using being a fan of Apple as a personality trait, which I can't stand. So, yeah, I'm not going to give Apple any money for Apple TV just to watch Ted Lasso, because that's the only thing I've ever heard anybody say is worth watching on Apple TV.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
So fuck Apple. But
definitely touched the nerve on that one.
Listen, man, everybody's got the companies that they don't like. There's people who don't buy from Amazon at all because of the way Amazon treats their workers.
Yeah, it's
I
true.
know Apple's kind of the same way, and I also know the kind of stuff that they pull when it comes to like, oh, you want this repaired? It's only going to cost us 12 cents for that part. We're going to charge you $800 for the labor.
Yeah.
It's not a good company.
But yeah, I really like the third act of this movie, man. There was just so many things to like about it. I thought the actual fight with Gore towards the end, where Jane basically beats him, I thought that was good. I thought the way that Jane beat him was good. Again, I thought the stuff with the kids was good. I thought him giving the kids his power in the same way that Odin took his powers away was interesting as well. And when he was giving them the powers, it made the same shape of the tree. All of the symmetry there was cool.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't it also light up like that with that shape when he was telling it, like, please take care of Jane always? Like in that montage?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like that was really cool to me, because that right there was all they needed to do to justify why Mjolnir chose her over any of the other millions of people that are suffering in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a bit different in the comic, but it made sense for this movie. I mean, seeing Axel use the Bifrost was cool because his dad was if you tie that back to the first movie and his dad was the guardian of the Bifrost, I thought that was a cool nod as well.
Yeah. I loved the ship that he had, too, with the two goats pulling it. Like, the two goats...
The two goats were really funny.
I thought the two goats were funny at first, and then, like, by the end of the movie, when they were, like, crashing into that moon on accident, I was like, all right, I hope that's the last we see of the goats. And thankfully it was. But, yeah, like, the design of that ship was really cool, and the way that he was using Stormbreaker to channel the Bifrost as, like, the front of the ship was awesome. But the little conversation he has with Stormbreaker on the ship is, like, low-key one of my favorite scenes in the movie. Like, when he pours a little beer on it, and all the beer gets absorbed into the to the top of the hammer, and it's like, oh, the hammer just drank the beer. Okay.
Yeah, I thought all this stuff with the hammer was funny as well. I think that could have easily not worked, but I thought all of the humor with Stormbreaker being jealous, because Thor was actually jealous. It was like an extension of him being jealous. I thought all that stuff was funny.
When he had his hand out, like, trying to call Mjolnir just to see if it would work, and Stormbreaker is just slowly coming around the side of him and like almost turns as if it's looking directly at him, cracked me up. That was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was great. There was a lot of the little things in this movie that just worked really well. And I was someone that was coming off of Endgame. I was really excited for Thor, the fourth Thor movie, because I'm thinking all the, interaction with him and the Guardians is going to be great. But I actually like the fact they weren't really in it at all, because we'd already talked about that. We got a little too much comedy, and I feel like it would have been even worse with the amount of comedy that we would have had in it if the Guardians were still there. So we got that in the beginning, that great opening scene with them after the gore stuff, obviously, and I thought they kind of rode off into the sunset well. What was that, Chris?
With the Guardians... Oh, never mind. For some reason, I was just like, was this the last thing we're going to see Dave Bautista in? And then I forgot. I'm like, oh, wait, there's a whole other Guardians movie coming out. Plus the holidays.
Yeah.
He's already talked about how, like, he's done filming his stuff, and now he's just done with Drax.
Yeah, well, he's going to be so there's a bunch of Guardian stuff in general. I know they have the Groot show, which obviously he won't be a part of, but that's going to be a Disney Plus thing. I Am Groot, I think later this year. Between that and then the third movie, which comes out, I think, on May 5th of next year. And then even before that, we have the Christmas holiday special, which comes out in December. So there's... And
apparently they just started showing the I Am Groot short before this movie in some theaters, is what I was reading.
Oh, I didn't see that. That's interesting.
I think that wasn't at, like, the beginning. They just started doing that, I believe.
Oh, okay. Man,
which I actually miss that in movies. Like, I don't know how much of that you guys remember. They used to do that a lot before movies. There would be, especially shorter movies, like before Honey, I Shrunk the Kids in theaters, there was a Roger Rabbit short.
Really?
Yeah. They used to do shorts before all the Pixar movies.
Yeah, they still...
They still released quite a few of those.
Yeah, they didn't do it with Lightyear. I saw Lightyear. They didn't do it with that one, but they did it before The Incredibles, I think, the second one from a few years ago. Trying to think what else was out.
At least a couple of the Toy Stories had them, too.
Yeah, they did it before almost all of them. I actually like that, too. It was a big Pixar thing. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so I like that they're doing that. I think that that's actually a really cool throwback to what, like, they used to do in movies, because... Yeah. Movies like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids is like a 90-minute movie. So you pad the runtime a little bit with this short.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I thought that was a cool thing when I read it.
That's cool. Yeah, I hope they do more of that sort of stuff, especially to preview the Disney Plus shows, because there's probably a lot of people out there that only go see the movies and either aren't subscribed to Disney Plus or aren't even aware of the shows or don't watch them or whatever. So
yeah, they've made like 6 of these little shorts about Maggie from The Simpsons.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're just all on Disney Plus. Like one of them was like a Star Wars related thing, but it wasn't shown before Star Wars in the theater. It was just kind of made to promote the movie coming to Disney Plus, I think.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, no, I wish they would bring it back in the theater. I think it's a cool little thing to add on there, especially with the Marvel stuff too, because Disney has such a deep catalog of stuff they could do, whether it's Marvel related or not. They could always do that before some of the Marvel movies. I think would be cool. But speaking of which, I'll ask you guys this last question before we end here and we talk Marvel Miss Marvel briefly after this. But we got the San Diego Comic-Con coming up this weekend. There's Comic-Cons throughout the rest of the year. They're all huge, but no bigger than this one. And I think this is going to be the first one where they do a lot of announcements related to the next phase of Marvel, the rest of Phase 4, since I want to say 2019. I remember staying up late to watch that one when I was away, and that was when they revealed Mahershala Ali as Blade, and that was actually where Jane Foster made a return.
That feels like so long ago.
It does.
I just want Blade already.
I know.
Just give it to me.
Hopefully it's coming soon. Hopefully we get more of an idea about that at this thing over the weekend, or more, announcements regarding the cast and movies and stuff like that. I'm super pumped. Chris, I'll start with you. Any expectations for what you think might be revealed coming up on the weekend?
I feel like if they go, because I think Marvel's gotten smarter with, we're not going to 5-year plan because that's going to change.
Yes.
So we might find out maybe what the next 2 to 3 years holds, maybe. But I think we're going to find out the next, like, team-up type thing they're going to do, and maybe who will be involved in it. Or at least the title of it might give us an idea of who will be involved in it. There's obviously so many characters in the MCU now that trying to make just Avengers and get all the people together doesn't make a lot of sense. But doing something like Young Avengers, where you're just focusing on a specific group of people that we've already established, that is something I could very heavily see them doing.
I saw someone fan cast Javier Bardem as Doctor Doom, which I thought would be fucking great if they actually did that. I don't know if they actually would, but what was that?
I responded to that tweet. You're talking about one where somebody was like, fan cast your favorite Fantastic Four movie.
Did you say that?
I was not the one who said that for Doctor Doom. I went weird with it. I was like, I want Wes Anderson to direct it, Luke Wilson to play Mr. Fantastic, Gwyneth Paltrow as the Invisible Woman, Jason Schwartzman as the Human Torch, Bill Murray as the Thing,
yes,
and Ben Mendelsohn as Doctor Doom. But that's a real recommendation. Ben Mendelsohn would rule as Doctor Doom.
I mean, it could work, right? Because he was only... Wait. Ben Mendelsohn is not the guy that was in Captain Marvel, right?
No, he was in the first Doctor Strange movie, but Doctor Doom usually has that mask on.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it didn't matter, yeah.
So Ben Mendelsohn also is one of those actors that like kind of disappears into roles. So I think he would be a fantastic choice, and I don't care that it would be a repeat because we've already started to see actors pop up in more places than one in the MCU, so who cares?
Yeah, exactly. Who gives a shit? What about you, Phil, as far as what you think is going to coming up on this weekend with San Diego Comic-Con?
I don't think we're going to get anything like what they're going to do with X-Men. I wouldn't be surprised if we get at least the cast for Fantastic Four.
Mm-hmm.
There's been all sorts of rumors about that the last week.
Yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised about that. I'm interested to see what the trailer for Wakanda Forever is going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, at this point, I'm just waiting to see what they do. I don't want to try to over speculate and get my hopes up about things, because I feel like that's a big part of why people are getting disappointed, because they're like, oh, it's going to be this, it's going to be that, and then when it's not, it's like, oh, well, I wanted more of this, and it's like, well, I mean, did you not learn your lesson during the Disney Plus shows where you guys wanted to speculate this was going to happen and that was going to happen, and then it didn't happen and you guys were mad at that? It's like, maybe Phase 4 isn't bad because the content isn't good. Maybe it's that you guys just keep trying to put the expectations higher and higher, and then when they don't live up to them, you get disappointed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think
I also don't like that so many people are hell-bent on getting perfect adaptations of stories that have already been told. Like, I don't want the exact same details that are in the comics for most of this stuff. Like, I want something... Well, right, exactly. Like, I want something that feels like that story, but gives me enough different things to keep me interested. Because it would be like, do you guys have any familiarity with the Vince Vaughn version of Psycho?
I don't.
So that was, what's that guy's name? Is it Lars von Trier who did that one? So one of those weird, European directors who's really famous basically remade Psycho scene for scene, line for line, shot for shot, but with new actors and new technology and all that. And it was garbage. Nobody liked it as much as the original. And that is one of the many examples that I use to say, when you adapt something that's already pre-existing, you have to tweak it a little bit because we've already seen something. And if we already like that thing, you need to give us something different to like, because what you're going to do trying to recreate it is almost never going to be as satisfying as the original.
Yeah,
ever.
I agree.
That's why the book is better than the movie is always what you hear when books are adapted into movies. And it's not always necessarily true, but because people form connections to these things over the years, then they have expectations going into it. I love that the MCU is taking stuff from the comics and being pretty good with some of it, but I want it to be slightly different just because otherwise it's not surprising. There's nothing to keep me invested. There's no mystery. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think especially I agree with both of what you guys said. Specifically, you, Phil, as far as like people getting their hopes up. We've talked about it before. We've reviewed all these shows so far as what people are expecting. I mean, it all started with WandaVision and where people thought Ralph Boner was going and stuff like that. And here we are a year and a half later, and we still get various misdirects and whatever. And at this point, I've just turned my brain off while watching a lot of these shows, and we get what we get. Some of it's better than expected, some of it's not, and most of it's delivered so far. Like, we'll get into the Ms. Marvel stuff in a moment on a different show that'll be up next week, but like the, spoiler alert, but the mutants thing that we got the reveal, I had no expectation that was going to happen. Like, I guess that was a whole retcon from some of the comics about her being an Inhuman and now she's a mutant and all this other shit, so we'll talk about that soon. But that was something I was not expecting. I was pleasantly surprised to hear about when I watched it last week. So if we can get more of that sort of stuff, cool twist, and we could speculate, but just don't get disappointed or don't be. It's not a shit movie because what you expected to happen didn't happen, and that's the case with Thor. That's the case with all the shows. That's the case with really anything in general, but specifically the MCU. So we'll see what they have in store coming up this weekend. But like I said, we'll talk soon on Ms. Marvel on the next show. We'll talk about that in a moment. But thank you guys as always for joining me. You guys can catch Chris on the Twitter machine, BR_Doctor, Phil on Twitter at PhilDL616. I'll talk to you guys in the next one.